Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sila Points podcast. I'm here with Rishi Arjun and Lakshya Jain, and I'm Suraj Srinivasan. And we're going to be talking about the England-New Zealand test match coming up in June, beginning of June. It's going to be a 2 test match series. And yes, we're sort of just going to talk about the squads, selections, and just go from there. But Rishi and Lakshya, I know you guys are in weekend leagues. Before we go into the test match and stuff, how'd your games go?
I'd rather not talk about my game. It was a it was a close game. I was batting pretty decently. I was finally getting some runs this season. I got to like 30ish, and then we needed 50. We needed like 55 in the last 10, and I just hit 3 boundaries in the previous over, so seems secure. And then the non-striker got moncutted, and then I got out next ball. I don't know. I think I didn't control my temper. It's pretty upset a moncut happened because it was like the bowler like he almost finished his action and then he just stopped and ran out the other guy. So I was pretty upset. I was like, dude, you were like, he wasn't actually taking a huge head start. Even though I'm okay with mon cutting usually, but yeah, I got out next ball and then we just collapsed.
When it happens to you, I guess. That's fine.
Yeah, when it happens to
Yeah,
my team, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
you have a different perspective. And then a fight nearly happened on the field because like our team got really upset about it. And then usually when we play, we have a couple people who are not playing, but are from our club. They come also to watch the game. So they started chanting, "Oh, losers!" like and a whole bunch of slurs and shit. And then the other team walked off the field to come at us because we were like chanting it while they were bowling too. So
were
got pretty
any
heated.
fisticuffs thrown or anything? That sounds dangerous.
Nah, no fist coming. The teams from Fresno, they're like they can get heated at times, but it was nothing too bad happened. But
Yeah, I figured if I drove all that way from Fresno and then saw people getting mad at us, I'd probably not be too happy either. But um,
it was
yeah, I
unfortunate.
mean, let's
It was our
see.
first loss too, but we're 2-3 now. So but
Yeah, we drove an hour away, played a game, bowled them all out for 125 in a 45 over match, and then somehow didn't chase the total down. Lost by about 15 runs. Got a wicket though. It was nice. 6 overs, 1 for 17. That was decent.
That's good.
oh, just for our viewers, by the way, Lakshya and I play in NCCA, Northern California Cricket Association. So that's the main Premier League here in Bay Area. So I believe Lakshya plays for a team based out of San Jose called Spartans, and I play for a team based in Fremont called Indus.
Yeah, and Rishi's games are live streamed, so if he wants to include that in the description, you guys can go and check that out. See him get angry, maybe throw a few punches. But that'll
No,
be
I
fun.
you can see I got out and then I threw my bat on the pitch.
Nice. All
I'm
right.
sure that
Yeah.
got you a nice little talking to from the umpires.
Actually, no, the umpires are good friends of mine actually. So
Okay.
and I just had a heated I was talking before I got out. I was talking to them like, oh, can we tell them to reverse their appeal for the Moncat? I was trying to get them to change the appeal, but couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, we got some exciting games. English summer coming up. Yeah. So I before we sort of start and go in depth on the actual players in the squad, et cetera. I think it's pretty nice given that, especially for the England side, that they're not going to be fielding their like whoever the players who play in the IPL, so like Butler, Bairstow, and Roy possibly. I think that's sort of nice because we get a better picture of players that are more dedicated to red ball cricket. So just specialists in that field rather than bringing like Bairstow in, who's like he's had a great form in the English T20 Slam, and then you just input him into the test squad, and obviously you won't see the results in most cases. But yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting seeing people like Lawrence back in the team, etc. We
Yeah,
got 3 Ollies in the squad, which is fun. But yeah,
I think it's just that this England squad is mainly just picked as a way to test out what you have for for the future in England, because the reality is the main English players, Joss Butler, Jofra Archer, Ben Stokes, they're not going to be playing for one reason or another. Archer, in his case, has a nasty elbow injury. Ben Stokes, Joss Butler, all rested. But it does seem to me like England have a really good chance to do what India did in the Australia tour, which is figure out what the young talents that they have coming up through the pipeline, who they could get to possibly fill in a pinch, who might be an undiscovered talent. Ollie Robinson's made some waves on the county circuit. We all know Ollie Stone bowls really, really fast. Craig Overton's bounced around the test scene for years on the fringes. So I think they've got a lot of possibilities on the bowling front in terms of seam bowlers that can nip it both ways, some genuine paces in Ollie Stone. But I think the most interesting thing for England is going to be seeing how their batsmen kick on. Specifically, we're looking at players like James Bracey, players like Dan Lawrence, Lawrence, Crawley, Sibley. These are guys that need a little bit more test cricket under the belts, just making it in their way. And you kind of have to wonder, how do they play in conditions that aren't that friendly for test batting against really, really high quality bowling? But one thing is, I think this is going to be a really big series for Ollie Pope. He hasn't gotten the chance to really make his mark on the test lineup just yet. Everyone knows he's there. He's got a spot in it for him, but he hasn't really kicked on and made the string of big scores that everyone's hoping from a batsman of his caliber, of his talent. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see whether he can take this test series to really step up. He's one of the more experienced members of this batting lineup in this test series. Maybe he could step up a little bit, make that spot his own, show them what he can do. 17 test matches in, the blooding in period is largely over. An average of 32 is not good enough for someone who averages 52 in first class cricket batting for Surrey. So,
Yeah, not going too specific, but where do you see him slotting in? Because you have Dan Lawrence. I see them either switching 5 or 6. But what do you guys think where Ollie Pope slots?
Well, Stokes is gone, so
Stokes is gone.
he does go to 5, right?
Right, but if Dan Lawrence slots in, then Ollie Pope could be pushed to 6.
I mean, I think the newer player will go at 6.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, Dan Lawrence will be 6. Well, that's one thing. England have a team without Ben Stokes now, and that now they have a huge balance issue. I trying to figure out possible 11, but now it's just like, oh, do I pick 4 bowlers or do I pick 5 bowlers and have my wicketkeeper Ben Foakes batting at 6? But
yeah, I think
before I talk about the balance, I was thinking, I don't know the selection of Ollie Robinson and Craig Overton. I don't see what they bring to the England team, to be honest. I know they've been picked out of having very good county championships, being dominant players in there, but I don't see them bringing much to an England test lineup because they're both bowlers who can bat pretty decently. They're both seam bowling all rounders that can nip it both ways, but Chris Wokes, Sam Curran do the same exact thing, and once those two are back in the test squads, I don't see these two ever playing, at least for a good time being. I think
Chris Wokes is 32.
Yeah, it's not that old.
So,
that's prime. That's prime.
Yeah, but he's also got tendonitis in his knee. The problem is if you rely on a very small core of bowlers, Anderson and Broad, they're not going to play forever. If you blood players like Ollie Robinson, if you get in players and give them experience in the test level, it can only do you some good.
I don't think England are looking to blood anything right now. Their whole focus right now is a rotation policy and looking to get bowlers that'll win them the India series and the Ashes right now. The thing with Wokes is he doesn't play every test match for England. So he does play multi-form. He is a multi-formative cricketer, but they do manage his workload pretty well because he doesn't get an opportunity to play every overseas test match. He obviously didn't play any matches in Asia. I don't see him even playing in Australia too much, but he has at least good 5-6 years left in my opinion. And Ollie Robinson, Craig Overton they bowl the same pace as him, and they're both solid number 8s, right? I think this would have been a good chance. At least I hope I think this would be a good chance to test out bowlers like Ollie Stone. Mark was obviously a proven player in test cricket, but I probably think they're going to look at these guys more because these guys are going to probably be the bowlers they want to see in the Ashes. Obviously, the question of Overton and Robinson coming into me would be if they want to stick with both playing Anderson and Broad together or rotating, only having one of them in because they do want to keep them fit for a huge India series and a huge Ashes. I'll be interested to see if they play both Anderson and Broad and then just pick one of between Wood, Stone, Robinson, or Overton, or if they pick both, or even go with a 4-man pace attack. But then I don't see where they'll be able to fit a spinner. So how do you see that balance here? Because they don't have a fifth bowler in Ben Stokes, easily option. So do they go 5 specialist batsmen, wicketkeeper at 6, and then try to pick 5 bowlers, or 6 batsmen, Foakes at 7, and then you pick 3 pacers, 1 spinner? Because there's only one spinning option in the squad. It's Jack Leach. So that's because Moeen Ali is still obviously part of that IPL bubble, so he wasn't picked for the squad. Dom Bess has been dropped after not the greatest.
Yeah, I think for Leach, it's always going to come into question English selection, because if you have Mitch Santner on the 5th day, and England doesn't pick Jack Leach as a spinner, and you have Mitch Santner on the 5th day just turning it square, and he's taking wickets, and then there's always a question of why didn't you pick Jack Leach? If you do pick Jack Leach and he doesn't pick up the wickets, he doesn't bowl well, then I mean it's you never get what you want when you're trying to pick a spinner in English conditions on a Greek track.
Wait, but Suraj, I thought Joe Root is the best spinner in England.
Oh, okay, no, you caught me there.
Come on, man. I was waiting. I was expecting you to go fully and be like pick 4 pace bowlers and just have Joe Root.
On that note, on a genuinely serious note, I don't think England are going to be too unhappy from a management and scouting point of view if Joe Root did end up using this series just to further his bowling a little bit more, because the reality is in Australia, you're not going to be playing 2 spinners on any of these tracks. But Root's bowling kicking on, getting a little bit better even from here would be quite the experience, quite the tool for England. In Australia, when you're trying to give your bowlers a break and you're trying to make sure you don't just bowl a part-timer like 40 runs in 4 overs.
I mean, seeing Akshar and Ashwin. Yeah, exactly. So seeing Ashwin and Akshar in Australia maybe makes sense, right?
Akshar wasn't in Australia. I think it's
Jadeja. Sorry.
Okay, my counterpoint to that though is Jadeja is a proper batsman and Ashwin has 4 Test hundreds. Jack Leach has a 92, but other than that, he's not really known for anything in batting aside from that 1 run he took by nudging it off his hips. And
the better argument is Ashwin and Jadeja are the 2 best spinners in the world, or in the top 3.
Too.
And Dom Bess and Moeen Ali are not close to them. That's
Dom Bess has
been doing really well for Yorkshire, though.
He got a 5 for, but I think he's still averaging 40 plus. But it's not a spinner's time in English cricket right now. In the county championship season, it's wet pitches. Usually you pick 1 spinner, but to divert the attention a bit to New Zealand, I'd be shocked if they pick a spinner in their team. Because they don't usually pick spinners in their team. Like the only weakness I see in the New Zealand's team right now is the spinning option. They have tended to go with a 5th pace bowling all rounder. Usually it's been between DeGrandhome and Darryl, and recently Daryl Mitchell, because DeGrandhome was injured for their home season. They picked Mitchell center for 1 Test match, and obviously we remember that leaping catch he took against Pakistan. But they usually don't pick a spinner. I'd be shocked if they even pick a spinner in this team, which could backfire them, because there are pitches in England that do spin. And I do think the World Test Championship final, which is played in Southampton, is one of the biggest spinning pitches in England. And India will obviously come with 2 spinners. So New Zealand should look to play a spinner. But if they're trying to win this series, they might go with a bowler like Colin DeGrandhome, who is ideal for English conditions, right?
It's interesting you bring up DeGrandhome, because I think there's possibly no all-rounder more underrated in world cricket than Colin DeGrandhome in Tests. Yeah, he is someone who his batting, it's good, it's there, but his bowling should not be as effective as it is.
He's like he does better than what his skill level suggests. You don't in all formats. In fact, you wouldn't see a batsman like him succeed in Test cricket, and you wouldn't see a bowler like him succeed in limited overs. But he somehow makes it work in all ways, and he's been a very valuable player from the World Cup to New Zealand's rise to number 1 Test nation. But I think back to England, what do you guys see as their balance? Should they go 6 batsmen, 1 keeper, 4 bowlers?
I think they go 6 batsmen, 1 keeper, 4 bowlers.
4 bowlers. Joe Root's 5th bowler then?
Yeah, and I think that's important because this is the experimental squad that you're sending. Really, the winning this Test series, while nice, is not nearly as high on the list of priorities as England as some of the other stuff later on this summer, and then
Could be considering New Zealand,
obviously.
considering New Zealand's ranked higher than India and Australia.
Well, but it's not part of the Test Championship, obviously, and winning against
Obviously, they're
India,
not part
winning
of
against Australia, right? So the thing is, for England, Joe Root being the fifth bowler really helps them here because they get to figure out just how good his bowling really is. How does he kick on? Obviously, no one really thinks the fifer in India was anything more than a function of the wicket being extremely weird. But
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to see him picking up fifers, but he's
well,
definitely.
I
He
think
picked
even
up
Joe
more.
Root would say that he hopes he doesn't pick up fifers. After the 5-wicket haul he took, I think he seemed a bit mortified that he was the one taking it.
Yeah, but then, but also this it does say a lot about the England team. You take out Stokes and Wilkes, and suddenly the balance shifted. Because every time you think of an England team, it's a team that bats to 8, 9, and has 6, 7 bowling
Yeah,
options.
and if my
When they
grandmother had a wheel, she'd be a bus. You can't just take out two of the best all rounders and then say, well, yeah, the balance shifts of the team. I mean, of course it
wait,
does.
yeah, like you think of England, they've always had the longest batting lineup in every team. But it also has to do a lot with in their ideal test team. Always had Stokes, Ali, Wilkes. That's 3 batsmen who play as bowlers. That seems to always extend their lineup a lot, and then give them 6, 7 bowling options.
But anyways, I think that's enough about England. Why don't we touch
Wait,
a little bit on New Zealand?
before we move to New Zealand, what's your top 3 for England? Are you sticking with Burns, Sibley, Crawley at the top 3? Or
Yeah,
are
I
you
think so. I think so.
so no room for James Bracey yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, same. I think those 3 are the best top 3 in these conditions, and they'll be the best top 3 in Australian conditions as well. 2 of them, all 3 are pretty exposed against a turning ball, but I don't think England have to worry about that for now. They can look at finding better players to spin later on, but I think I'd stick with that top 3. Yeah, but let's move on to New Zealand squad. So let's talk about the actual good team in the series, the team that is going to the World Test Championship. There's not too much to talk about their squad. New Zealand are a fairly consistent team when picking selections. There's obviously the biggest selection has probably been the arrival of Devon Conway into the first class and into the Test team. So Devon Conway's been killing it for New Zealand in the T20 format. He obviously got a century early on this series, got a good 99 against Australia as well. And he has a very strong first class record, so that opened up a spot for him in the Test squad. And then Colin de Grandhomme comes back from injury, and then Will Young and Rachin Ravindra are the spare batsmen they've got on their team. But otherwise, New Zealand have had a fairly settled team. Obviously, this is going to be BJ Watling's final series of Test cricket, this and then the World Test Championship. But at the moment, they have their backup wicketkeeper as their opener, Tom Blundell, and then they have had Ross. They've had Kane 3, Ross Taylor 4, and Nichols 5, Watling 6, and then the only real talk they'll have is they'll pick their 4 fast bowlers: Southey, Bolt, Wagner, and Jameson. Now the only question they probably have is who bats at 7. Will they go with de Grandhomme, who's been their main number 7 for a long time, Daryl Mitchell, who's a similar player to de Grandhomme but had a stellar home season, or do they pick a spinner in either Mitch Sen or H.S. Patel? What do you guys think? And I know I talked a lot in that go, but I think as anyone if you're not new to this podcast, you know how much I love this New Zealand team. And I already tell you this, my series prediction, 2-0.
I know. I think it's an interesting question. Suraj, actually, I want to hear your thoughts here. Specifically on the New Zealand batting lineup, what do you think is going to happen with it?
Specifically to answer Rishi's question, Granholm is probably the best option right now, consistent, and that's what they've been picking. So I don't see any changes with that. Again, that comes down to the question of would you choose a spinner in an English track? And I think that's probably a question that they only have to answer in the second test after looking at the pitch. They're playing Lords in the first one, right? And then where's the second one? You guys know?
I thought every match is Southampton.
Is it?
Lords, Birmingham. Birmingham is the second match.
Okay. Is that a turning pitch? Do we know? Or
no, that's their seam bowling. But usually there is not that much of a steam wicket that you pick 5 pace bowlers. Like both teams usually have a spinner each.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so that's the only question. I think Sander most definitely, if they do pick a spinner, going to be picked over Patel, purely because he can bat as well. Patel's more of just a pure spinner. But yeah, that's sort of where I sit on that.
Yeah, but I think they might run into issues where I could see the first 2 test matches against England, they pick 5 pace bowlers, and that might work well for them. But Southampton is a spinning wicket, as we talked about earlier. It's not like a Turner or anything, but it does favor
More
spinners.
so than, yeah.
When India played England last time, Moeen got 9 wickets in the match, and it's obviously the match where Ashwin had a shoulder injury, and he was criticized for not being able to bowl England out. So, and I'm pretty confident India will go with both Ashwin and Jadeja in their team. So, and if they end up picking wickets and New Zealand don't have a spinner, there'll be a lot of questions asked. But then you also have to look at the teams you're playing. India is a better player, better playing spin than New Zealand would be. So it would make more sense for India to pick spinners versus New Zealand picking 2 unproven spinners at the test level between mid-center and Ajaz Patel. But it's definitely a tricky question because New Zealand haven't played New Zealand haven't played in Asia in a long time. They haven't played in England in a long time. So they've mainly played in places where you don't really need a spinner. It's been 6 years since New Zealand and England have played a series. I'm sure you guys might probably remember that 2000.
Has it been that long?
It's 2015 in England.
Oh, okay. Because I definitely remember Joe Root scoring that 254 in Hamilton.
That's what you remember? Oh, I remember BJ Walding's 200. But
yeah. Both those innings put me to sleep.
How? BJ Walling's 200? What an innings that was. I watched every ball of that, I think. I was in college, too. Yeah, that was my freshman year. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was a junior in college that time. All I remember about that series is me looking at it being like, I would really kill for a 58 all-out collapse right about now.
That I remember. That I was jumping up and down for. Oh, my God. I thought England were going to get bowled out for 22, and then Craig Overton. That's probably the most valuable thing Craig Overton has done so far in his short career. He saved England from the lowest test score. Oh, my God. What a bowling that was that day. But no, the last time New Zealand played in England, it was a very thrilling series. 1-1. Both matches went down to the final day. In fact, the last 10 overs. And it's very disappointing that they didn't get a third test match. In fact, that New Zealand series was more thrilling than the Ashes that happened later that summer. But and unfortunately, again, New Zealand have been robbed of a third test match. But instead, the third test match, they'll play the World Test Championship final. But normally New Zealand, England, we know from all formats have really thrilling encounters. They're 2 fairly evenly matched sides, and they have similar conditions. Both teams are able to adapt well to each other's conditions. How do you guys see the New Zealand batting lineup, which has been doing really, really well in the last few years? How do you see them doing in English conditions? Because some of their players, Tom Latham, Kane Wilson, they do have decent records in English conditions, but some of them are new. Tom Blundell is obviously his first test match. Henry Nicholls will be his first test match playing in England.
Yeah, I think the English pace attack is going to be fairly experienced, especially in having come off the domestic season. So they'll know what they're doing at least, and it'll be a decent attack in comparison to having like Archer, who's usually just sitting out, and then he comes in just out of the blue, and then we don't really know what he has to offer, usually other than just pace. But yeah, I think obviously New Zealand's become a fairly strong side since the last series that they had. But it'll be a pretty decent battle. How they play, if England chooses to play Jack Leach, how they play him would be a decider really, because I think more so than the pace, facing spin, and even if you bring in Joe Root, it'd be interesting to see how they face that. Yeah.
Really, you think Jack Leach is going to play that big of a role here?
I think he could. If he does get selected, I think it's the perfect change to the lineup rather than having your right arm mediums like pacers, and obviously Anderson and Broad are just going to be consistent as hell. But I think that change that Jack Leach brings is going to be pretty important if he plays.
I think based on the previous series which was played in New Zealand, I think they'll go hard at Jack Leach. They'll try to attack him from the go and get him. They won't want him to settle.
That brings wickets though.
That does bring wickets. I know. But
my thing with Jack Leach is
because they have.
I've never really thought Jack Leach is nearly as good as everyone makes him out to be. He's a quality spinner for sure. He's a decent, very decent variation, very decent option, but he's not going to be the guy that's a lead spinner, a game-breaking talent. He's someone who can hold down his end and can do a reasonable job. but that's not the person you rely on to win you matches. I think if this series comes down to Jack Leach, England is probably losing it.
But yeah, in English conditions, I don't think Jack Leach's role is going to be if he bowls 10 overs, 20 runs, picks up 0 wickets, England will be very happy. He can only win matches if it's in Asia, and he had very good series. And
he's a good bowler in Asia. This is not to slide him, but
he's a
unless
good bowler
you're
in
playing,
England too. He's a good bowler in England. He had a very good Ashes too. Like he's a good bowler there, but he's not a
yeah, of course. But unless you're
day five.
playing
Day five.
in a select number of grounds in England, you're not really going to what Southampton.
But like, which spinner in the world is going to win you test matches in green tops? Like,
well, the only two that I can think of both play for India.
Yeah, and maybe you got Nathan Lyon too, but like, yeah,
Maybe.
I mean, I don't think just because Jack Leach is not a top 3 spinner in the world doesn't mean he's not still a high quality bowler.
He's a quality bowler, but he's not the person that can win you a game regardless of the surface. There's a few talents that can do that. You've got Ashwin Jadeja who can do that. You've got Pat Cummins who can do that in a test match. Jofra Archer has that game-breaking speed, but Jack Leach does not have that level that these guys have. And I think there's an important distinction to be made. It does not mean you're not a quality cricketer. Way too often in the past, England, Australia, both of these nations have been caught out trying to replicate the next biggest thing. Australia for a long time chucked around every spinner that could turn the ball even a bit and said he was the next Shane Warne. Hell, they thought Steve Smith was the next Shane Warne. The only thing about him that looked like Shane Warne was the hair. So again, I think it's important to realize not every single player is a star. You've got some players who do a good job. You let them do that job without getting mad. But anyways, let's talk about how New Zealand would handle England's bowling lineup, because I think there's an interesting thing here. Specifically, Tom Blundell, for example, batted pretty well in the few test matches he's had so far, but you get the sense that there's something more he can do. Just a little bit of inconsistency. Now, there's no high pace to trouble him here, right? Michael Atherton has said county cricket's a game played below the hip, international cricket's a game played above the hip, but against guys like the ones that England are trotting out right now, you're not going to face too much trouble with pace.
Unless Stone or Wood play, which I can't see both of them playing.
I think only one of them is going to play. And I think across the test, they're not healthy enough to play 2 consecutive tests. And even if they do, England is in a place where high pace makes the difference.
But in English conditions, I think high pace, unless you're extremely good like a Pat Cummins, it could be used to advantage for it by a batsman, especially if you try to bowl quick. Like a lot of even like the quickest bowler, Brett Lee, has struggled in English conditions because he just spray the ball around, and that swing, sometimes a slower 130 ball swings a little bit more than a 140.
A little bit more. It's got that much more time. It doesn't cut through the air at fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So then sometimes you could use the pace. So sometimes pace. Marco's record in England is fairly average. The reason he's constantly being picked in test squads is what he can do outside in conditions like Australia, South Africa, New Zealand.
Agreed. But let's talk about New Zealand's batting, because I think we talk a lot about England, but what do you think about New Zealand's batting? Who are the X factors other than Kane Williamson, who we all know is going to be well, Colin de Garnham, who we covered? Who else do we have here that
you think you brought up Tom Blundell? So in my opinion, it's probably going to be Tom Blundell. This is probably his last 3 test matches as an opener, to be honest. He's
really
because as BJ Wilding's returned to started, Tom Blundell's a full-time wicketkeeper, so I'm pretty sure he's going to go down to 6, and they're going to pick a new opener, and probably Will Young or Devin Conway will probably come into the top order. So Tom Blundell has a real unless Tom Blundell really performs well, I think his future is going to be at number 6 or 7 as New Zealand's next wicketkeeper batsman. So I'd see Latham as being New Zealand's key batsman here. Obviously, I don't think we need to talk about Kane Williamson or Ross Taylor. They're legends of New Zealand cricket. We know how crucial they are to this team. But Tom Latham is one of the, obviously I had him in our World Test 11. He's been one of the most consistent openers, and he's an opener who he only had 2 test matches obviously in England so far, but he scored 50s in 2 of those test matches, and he is a player who's suited to English conditions. He leaves the ball well, judges the ball well in length, and he limits his stroke play until the ball comes out, and he then goes aggressive against the spinners. So I think he's a crucial player for New Zealand, because a lot of times it's the hardest challenge in Test cricket is overseas opening bats in English conditions. so many of them have lost their spots to test squad because of how many times they fail in England, and which is difficult because you're facing Anderson and Broad on green toss, which is probably the most difficult thing you can do. But Tom Latham is probably a player who has the ability to stand up to a high quality pace attack, and I think he's going to be crucial for them. Both Latham and Blundell, and then Henry Nichols too is probably a crucial player. He's been scoring a lot of good runs, but outside of that one really good series he had against Pakistan, he's not really had breakthrough hundreds against strong opposition. And this would be a good opportunity for him to show that he can expand his game to the next level, playing against this bowling attack. BJ Watling has scored runs against England before. He scored a beautiful century when they won that second Test match in 2015, and he has a game that I think I see him doing pretty well, and he'll be hungry to do well considering this is going to be his last three test matches.
What do you think the weakest thing is weakest part of the squad, New Zealand squad, is? Because I know the bowling attack has been pretty solid. Their pace attack is just amazing. They have all varieties of pace bowling that they need. But in terms of the batting, where do you think the weakest spot is?
Per the batting of their squad, because I have an answer to the squad question.
Both.
Okay, for squad, I feel because there are going to be times in England where day 5 you need a quality attacking spinner that can win you a test match, and I think New Zealand do lack that. I don't think Mitchell Sanders is the guy to win you a test match with the ball. He has no real threat when it comes. He's just a holding bowler, and I don't think they'll pick HS Patel because that'll shorten their batting lineup because they play their wicketkeeper at 6, and so that it will probably be New Zealand's issue if they ever are put in a situation where they need a spinner to win them a test match on day 5. Batting wise, we saw New Zealand's batting. Their last overseas tour was in Australia, where they had a pretty miserable tour. They were beaten 3-0, and their batting lineup failed pretty badly. Only one guy got a century that entire tour, and so it'll be interesting. So while it's not a weakness, there will be a little bit of pressure to see if their batting lineup, which has been stacked by high home averages, can do well in English conditions, which is not the easiest places for batsmen at all. So while I wouldn't say they have any weaknesses in their top 6, they have the easiest top 6 to pick probably in world cricket right now. Like, you can name their top 6 off without having really any arguments here. But a lot of those players are not. 3 of those players I think haven't played in England yet, so they are definitely unproven in this country, and they can definitely be exposed.
Fair enough. Yeah. Same thing goes for England then, just to jump back. What is their weakest point, Lakshya?
I think it's just too new of a squad. I'm not sure that they have the quality to really stand up against this New Zealand bowling lineup. You've got Bolt, you've got Southey, you've got Jamieson, you've got Wagner, all in conditions that really, really suit them. And I think outside of Joe Root, maybe Ollie Pope, this England team is going to have a really hard time with their batting. Their best hope is to hope for a green top and hope that their bowling lineup can cancel out New Zealand's. The variance is high enough there in runs to where neither team scores too highly, because man to man, when it's a heavy green top versus heavy green top, you can see how the English could come out on top with their experience of the conditions, maybe. But
yeah,
wicket gets a bit flatter. The English don't have the pace to trouble the Kiwis, while the Kiwis can find banana swing from anywhere with Bolt and Southey, and they have the bounce to make it uncomfortable. Wagner, so
Jamieson,
yeah. When you line up the batting lineups one by one, New Zealand are clearly advantaged, right?
They really are.
Like, I don't think there's any outside of comparing Joe Root and Ross Taylor. There's no really any fair comparisons. New Zealand's top 3 is much greater than England's top 3. The wicketkeeper Watling is way better than most batsmen in the England team. So man to man,
you're not giving enough credit to the experience in English conditions. I think that's going to play a much larger deal than
I do. I think when it comes to these conditions, Anderson and Broad are number 1 and number 2.
Even for the batsmen, though, not just for bowlers.
Because Rory Burns is coming off a really good county championship. Zach Crawley has scored a lot of runs last English summer, and I think Dom Smith coming back from injury, and he's got a bit of runs yet, but he hasn't played too much yet. So yes, that is true, but they're not going to be. It's going to be a different quality level of bowling attack, and we've seen previous England teams get blown away by New Zealand. They've had all different types of top orders. Like back when they were bowled out for 50, it was Cook, their best opener of all time, Mark Stoneman, and back then Joe Root was batting at 3, and all 3 were blown away. And you never know. It's England conditions. Like no matter your experience, it's just facing that green top ball. You can easily get dismissed.
Favors the bowlers. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be. I think it'll be a low scoring series, like with the 2 bowling attacks. And while I think New Zealand have a strong batting lineup, I don't know if they can step up that as well they do in New Zealand conditions. I could definitely see this being a 3-day, 4-day test matches.
Solid. Predictions for the series from both of you?
Safe option to say 1-1, considering how most England New Zealand series are, but Kiwi me is gonna say 2-0. Especially because they don't have, especially because in every series they've played, Ben Stokes has been a big factor for England, and he's not there. He has a pretty good record against the Kiwis. Taking him out, taking Foakes out, I'm definitely giving it to
I think it all depends. For me, it all depends on Joe Root's form and whether one of Broad or Anderson kicks on each game. Because if Joe Root bats well, England could make this 1-1 or even 2-0, because he's really the only batsman in my mind with the true class to go and dominate the New Zealand bowling attack.
So I know I've already brought up this point before, but so this is gonna be BJ Walding's last test series. What do you guys see as his legacy as a New Zealand cricketer? Is he in New Zealand's all-time 11? Is he their best wicketkeeper batsman ever? What do you guys think?
I think he's the best ever keeper batsman. I don't think it's much of a contest.
The only Brendan McCullum?
I see that argument, but I think McCullum's utility, I said keeper batsman. I didn't say player. I said keeper batsman. I think from that point of view, BJ Watling is better than Brendan McCullum.
Fair. I think my first memory of BJ Watling is that Brendan McCullum partnership against India. And since then, all I can think about is all the times he scores whatever New Zealand are struggling. In fact, I'm pretty sure his average is a lot higher when New Zealand are 100 for 5 compared to when New Zealand are 400 for 5.
Yeah.
He seems to
That's always been your story in the previous podcast too.
I know. I've said this before, but he always seems to do well when it seems like you need to make it harder for him to score. Like I've seen him fail on some of the flattest wickets, but score against some of the toughest bowling attacks.
That said, I can actually see, the more I think about it, the more I'm not sure of this take, because McCullum does have a test triple century. He does have 101 test matches played. He did it as captain, which undoubtedly he did a lot of this as captain, which undoubtedly has an impact on his batting. I think perhaps it's recency bias that guides me towards Watling, because looking at it more and more, I think McCullum's just got some things that Watling can replicate across his career through no fault of his own. But I think a test 100 with Brendan McCullum, more ODIs and more test centuries, more matches played.
He's also the first guy to hit a 100 for New Zealand too.
Exactly. I think it's actually got to be McCullum. I take my original take back. I think it's got to be McCullum. And the more I think of it, the more I think it's a very, very clear choice between the two.
So I don't have a New Zealand all-time 11, but I just have both. I have both of them in. I have McCullum as a batsman, and then I have Watling as the keeper. So I see them both. They're both all-time. Will we agree that BJ Watling is an all-time New Zealand great though? Is that a fair assumption to make now?
For sure. Yeah.
And was he the best test wicketkeeper in the 2010s?
You just want us to support him so badly, don't you? Just leading questions right here.
That's a question I don't think I'm not going to say that's the right answer, because I mean Sankara has played in that period, Dhoni has played in that period, and those are probably better batsmen than him. But I think 2015.
Again, it depends on your question, right? If it's a keeper batsman versus batsman.
You have to combine the two. You have to look at both perspectives. If I think 2015 onwards, the only competition he has is Quinton de Kock. I don't think anyone else is close to him.
That's fair.
You think of how many match
post 2015, yeah.
Post 2015, you think of how many match winning and match saving hundreds he has. He has no useless runs, and then he's a quality wicketkeeper as well. He's up there with your Ridhaman Sahas, your Tim Payne, the people who are considered to be the best wicketkeepers. Ben Foakes, he's as good as them when it comes to wicketkeeping purely. So I think he's definitely up there. And then that's the way he plays the game too. It's good.
Yeah.
I might have shed a tear when I heard he retired. I had a feeling he was gonna retire soon, and I was like, I really hope he doesn't.
How old is
But-
he now?
35, 34.
Yeah, 35, almost 36. All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that podcast. Let us know what your thoughts. Give us your prediction for the series.
We'll come here after New Zealand win 2-0, and we'll talk about how they'll beat India as well.
Yeah, make sure to check out Rishi's game from last Saturday. Yeah, and then see him rage, get out. Yeah, the monk cut too. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. All right, thanks guys.
The Kiwis.